you become what they call self-realized, because you understand you are in the driver's seat. You're reflecting God, the infinite, but you have the same powers within you to do the things that were promised to us by Jesus. He said, you can do the same things I'm doing and even more. And I started really digging into the scriptures in the Bible and the teachings of Jesus, and it made sense. But before reading the Bible, the Old Testament and different stories had kind of frightened me. It was like so gory and scary. And, I thought God was a God of vengeance. And if you were a bad person, well, if you're a bad person, you might get hurt, but you're hurting yourself. God is good.
I'm pleased to have Rebecca Tripp with me today. Rebecca had an amazing spiritual experience that she's come here to share with us today. Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for being my guest. I'm honored to have you.
Hello, Tia, and it's wonderful to be here. Thank
So,
you.
tell me what happened. You had this life transforming experience.
I did. I'll give you a little background. I was born way back in 1946. I came in here right after World War II, I'm sorry, World War II. And, I've kind of realized from the work of Dolores Cannon that I'm part of that first wave. We came here because we knew big things were going to happen in this period of time on planet Earth. So here we are. And I even flashed on, I think, what was my immediate past life when I was 21 years old. I was living in New York City. I was a stewardess. I became motivated to become a stewardess in 1967, highly motivated after I had 3 UFOs hovering over my head, saucers with little domes on top on the coast of Massachusetts. And that happened when I was about 18 years old. I was looking out over the Atlantic toward Martha's Vineyard, and these 3 disc type saucers came flying in, and they were doing the right angle turns, not making any noise. And they came closer and closer and closer, and they were blinking this orangey red light. And I got out of the car I was in to get a better look, and there they were right over my head. And they kind of hovered on the shore and then whipped back out to sea. And when I reflect back on it at this stage of my life, because that was way back in 1966, I feel like, they contacted me to motivate me to become a stewardess so I could go out and meet some people and travel the world and check things out. And funnily enough, the very first base that I was in was Chicago. I was living in what they called a stew zoo with all these stewardesses in like a 5-story building in downtown Chicago. And then these 2 men moved in because they weren't stupid. They knew that they'd have people to take out to dinner and be around the stewardesses back then. But one of them was the nephew of a very famous metaphysical teacher named Earl Shoaff. My friend's name was Ron Shoaff, and he was the nephew. One day he sat myself and my roommate down, and he taught us how to manifest by writing something down on an index card in the present tense and visualizing it when we went to bed at night, when we woke up in the morning, and feeling like we'd already gotten it. Well, I didn't really like windy Chicago, so I wrote down on my card, I am now living in a beautiful apartment in New York City. Within a couple of months, I was living in a beautiful apartment in New York City. My transfer had gone through. And because it was so effortless the very first time I did it, I was hooked. I started reading all the metaphysical books I could find. Think and Grow Rich was the first one. That was what he recommended. But I began to understand the connection between what we think about, what we put our intention on, and what we attract into our life. And I could even read a magazine article about some celebrity, and bingo, they'd show up on my flight. And it seemed like it was like magic. It was really exciting. I felt like I'd found the genie in the bottle, because I realized if you really needed to manifest something and you put your mind to it, you could. Well, moving along a little bit further, I'm living in California and I'm in my mid-20s, and I get a very bad diagnosis from a doctor. He wants to do a hysterectomy. He said I have early cancer. Now, I could not figure out how you make that connection between the mind and the cells in the body to heal them. I could figure out that if you think about certain things, you'll attract the people, the experiences, the situations. But how do you change your body? How do you rearrange it if you get a bad diagnosis? I had met a man who told me he had had a spiritual healing through prayer of a brain tumor. We just had a brief conversation about it. He wanted to share it with me. And I filed it away in my subconscious mind. And when I got this dire prediction from the doctor that if I didn't have the surgery, I would be dead by the time I was 40, I was absolutely horrified with fear. My body went numb. I couldn't even function. It was just the most dismal, depressing, horrific news I had ever gotten in my life. I was given a death sentence because I didn't want surgery. That was not on my radar screen at all. It was just not an option for me in my mid-20s. So I went to a spiritual healer. And as I was sitting in her office, not knowing what to expect, her loving countenance and very simple explanation to me that I was the perfect child of God and perfect health was my birthright. I mean, it took me years to figure out what exactly happened. It was like my crown chakra opened up. I became my infinite self. And in a nanosecond, I said to myself, but of course, you created this because you create everything with your thoughts and you can uncreate it. And I went back to sort of like my birth and realized I wasn't born with any kind of condition. So, yes, perfect health was my birthright. And I totally got it on a very, very spiritual level. And this was a spiritual awakening for me because for 3 days, I was living in an altered state of consciousness. Everywhere I went, nature was more beautiful. The birds, the trees, the light, everything was brighter. And it was absolutely like living in heaven for 3 days. But the downside of that was trying to interact with my human friends that weren't there. And it was disorienting because I was operating from this higher level of consciousness and they were still operating in the level that we had always interacted in, and it was almost painful. And I can see where some people would have what they call a psychotic breakdown that have a spiritual awakening. So we emerge gently from the matter-based thinking to the spiritually based thinking. But when it happens and you meet your higher self and you become what they call self-realized, because you understand you are in the driver's seat. You're reflecting God, the infinite, but you have the same powers within you to do the things that were promised to us by Jesus. You know, he said, you can do the same things I'm doing and even more. And I started really digging into the scriptures in the Bible and the teachings of Jesus, and it made sense. But before reading the Bible, the Old Testament and different stories had kind of frightened me. You know, it was like so gory and scary. And, I thought God was a God of vengeance. And if you were a bad person, well, if you're a bad person, you might get hurt, but you're hurting yourself. God is good. I found that out. And when you rely on God and you trust God, you can get rid of all your fear, your anxiety. You can heal yourself. You can manifest. And it was like step by step, I was shown in this life through my teachers and things that I was led to by allowing my higher self to guide me to the right airline, the right place to live in 1967, where I could meet my first teacher. And then, other things along the way that would show up at the right time have made me realize we are all here on this very fascinating journey. And if we're open to using whatever comes into our experience, even things that are difficult as stepping stones to the next level and the next level, and realizing there are no problems, only solutions, we will begin to understand that we don't have to be upset anymore. And I think you and the work that you do and other people like you and us are bringing these messages to the world because the time is right. It's definitely the time to give people the support they need. And there are many people out there that are good people, but they've never studied, metaphysics or gotten to the first base with it, where you begin to understand that you are in the driver's seat. Now, interestingly enough, when that man, Ron, he sat my roommate and myself down to teach us how to manifest, she put her fingers in her ears. She didn't want to hear it. Now, and didn't Jesus say, you have to have ears to hear and eyes to see? Not everybody is there. Not everybody wants to see or wants to hear. But I do believe the biggest deterrent to seeing and hearing is fear. And perfect love will cast out fear. So when you stand up to your fear, which I had to do many times as a crew member, I flew for 35 years all over the world. Things happen on airplanes, things happen in foreign countries. But I learned that if you didn't let the fear take over and you went within and claimed that God will never let you down. I used to do this a lot when there was severe turbulence. Nobody likes severe turbulence. It's, kind of creepy. You feel like the airplane's going to fall apart. So I would just sit down, calm myself down, and tell myself that God was in charge, and one with God is always a majority. You only need one person in an environment. Could be an airplane, it could be a building, it could be whatever. If one person is aligned with God, it will change the dynamics of a lot of things, because that's the way it works. We have the power because it's spiritual power, but it's invisible. So that's why many people don't take it seriously, but it's more powerful than the laws of physics. There are metaphysical laws governing the universe. And when you begin to understand and study the metaphysical laws, like the law of reciprocity, the law of abundance, the law of attraction, I had to learn the law of non-resistance a few times in my life, because if you're really resisting something, it will persist. I wrote this book, Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant, which came out a few years ago. And there were 3 husbands in the book. And I learned a lot from every one of them. I had a, very interesting life on some levels. I kind of took advantage of the fact that I was a stewardess, and it was easy for me to meet people and have experiences. So I did. And I checked out a lot of things. One of the things, because I had seen those 3 UFOs up close before I landed my job as a stewardess, I was motivated to become a stewardess because I wanted to interview the pilots to find out where they were coming from. Because these saucers were like nothing I had ever heard of on planet Earth. Nothing had ever been in the news, like, we've developed these, or these are from another planet. Nobody knew. And I saw them up close. So I would, go up to the cockpit and ask the pilots about UFOs. And many times they would freeze up and get very nervous because they weren't allowed to talk about them. But that was kind of like an eye-opener for me to find out there's certain things that people don't want you to talk about. But being the kind of person I am, if I had someone sitting on the airplane that was a CEO of a big company, or worked for the FBI or something unusual, and I thought they had information, I would try to pick their brain. And I got a lot of information about planet Earth. And, it's a very interesting place. But the best part about it is that once you understand that you can free yourself from all these negative situations, you can become sovereign. And that is the best part of the journey, because once you do that, it becomes a divine adventure.
So, how do we do that? How do we become sovereign?
Well, that's the interesting question, which I'm a metaphysical teacher. I've taught people over the years. I started teaching the Silva Ultramind course back in 2004. And I used to travel around the country teaching people how to get to that alpha level of consciousness so they could solve problems. And many people just intuitively know there's got to be a better way to use my mind. They've had glimpses. They've either had a psychic experience, a revelatory dream, or something's happened to them, like happened to me with the UFOs that got them really motivated. And once you get motivated and you look for the answers, the right books will show up, the right teachers will show up, but you have to be motivated. You have to have a passion for it. Um, One of my favorite teachers, Gurdjieff, when I first started studying metaphysics, used to say, you have to have a magnetic center for it. And, I've heard many teachers, when it happened to me, and I sat there and I was instantaneously healed of this belief in cancer, every cell in my body was changed. I went home. I was living on Belvedere Island in Marin County, and I always had this speck in my eye, in the cornea, that made it look like there was something in there, you know. And passengers would sometimes say, "Oh, you have that speck in your cornea." It went away. It was like every cell in my body disappeared. It didn't disappear, but transformed. Just I went from more acidic to more very alkaline. It was amazing. It was very fascinating because now you never know when that's going to happen. It can happen if you're in a really, really horrible situation and you surrender. See, I surrendered. I wasn't going to have surgery, so I surrendered to God. And many people are having these strangely negative things happening in their lives right now. And it's like, how many times do you want to get hit over the head until you finally say, I give up, God, help me? And that's usually when it happens. But it doesn't have to be that negative. It could also be done just because God is love. And when you open your consciousness to loving everyone and unconditional love, you can live in that frequency. But it seems like in this dimension, it usually happens when someone either loses everything, has a health crisis, gets divorced, something big like that happens, and then they surrender. You hear them all the time talking. A near death experience is really dying, to your old self, and then they find out there is no death, you know.
You said that there's things happening now. Is there a reason why they're happening now?
Well, I think all the great mystics and prophets have always predicted that the planet goes through these cycles. The Kali Yuga talks about, these 25,000 year cycles. I don't really follow all those teachings. But although I do love the work of Paramahansa Yogananda. He was a mystic who came to America to teach Americans how to meditate, the Westerners, and because we had never really been that into going within. And I do think we're living in a time of great transition. And maybe the old way of being locked into our five senses and only believing our 3D world, which is what many scientists still do. They're always saying, well, I can't measure it. No, you cannot measure mental telepathy or psychic ability or remote viewing or spiritual healing like you can measure, things in the three-dimensional world, but they're real. They're very, very real. Even if just because you're a non-believer in these things doesn't negate them. So I think, we're living in a time where more and more people will probably start going, I just don't like what I'm doing right now. Maybe it's not as pleasant to go to work as it used to be, or they're having problems with family or whatever. and they'll start to want to find solutions, and they'll turn more and more within to find the solutions. Because if you can surrender to God and your higher self and that level of consciousness where all the solutions are, you will get the answers. I mean, I remember years ago, just a couple of examples. We had this massive pilot strike, and massive, and we knew it was coming. I had a dream about it where I saw all these pilots with smoke around their heads and they were in battle with the company. And I had just bought a condo in Boston about a year before, and I'm tossing and turning. How am I going to pay my bills if I don't make an income? And I was real worried about it. And then bingo, it popped into my head. Oh, well, this condo has increased in value in the past year. I'll go get an equity line of credit. And I did, and I bid my trip. So I flew them all before the strike hit. And I was ready and I was calm as a cucumber because my higher self, my intuition let me know what to do. And if you can rely on your intuition when you need a solution, it will give you an answer. That's what the Silva training was all about, that I was teaching people, was, learning that you can ask your higher self when you're falling asleep at night, what do I need to know? How can I make this work? What is the solution? Am I on the right path? Am I with the right person? And you will get the answer because your higher self already knows what your future is. you know I mean, you have free choice in how you respond to it. One time when I was living in Gramercy Park, New York, I woke up. I heard this voice in my apartment. I was there alone with my little dog Fuzzy, and I heard a voice tell me, you will be leaving New York by the end of March. A male voice, and it was very assertive, very loving. And I went, whoa, that was interesting. So I called up my landlord, who was down in Florida, and I said, do you think I could break my lease if I wanted to leave the apartment? He said, no, absolutely not. This was in February of that year. He calls me back a couple of weeks later. He says, Rebecca, I hate to tell you this, but you're going to have to leave that apartment by the end of March. It's going co-op and I want to buy it. And you're kind of like an illegal tenant, so you have to leave. I mean, that was very interesting, but your higher self knows exactly what you're going to be doing. Sometimes all you have to do is wait for your guidance to let you know.
How can we differentiate the higher self's voice from our own kind of like inner chatter?
The ego voice, yes. Yes. Well, that's where you have to do the inner work, and I do believe getting on a spiritual path is a good thing, because all of the spiritual paths teach people how to work on themselves, to develop a better character, to be a better person, to let go of all the negative emotions that block us. If you're feeling angry or upset all the time or stressed out, I mean, look at all the people that are living in constant stress. And then they wonder why they get sick. You need to be able to free yourself from those negative emotions. Now, I happen to study, the Bible and scriptures. And I found that as soon as I started really digging, I'm not what I would call a reborn Christian, but I'm a Christian. But I love the teachings of other mystics that are on the path. But I find that Jesus had a message that was very pure, that unconditional love message. Like when he was on the cross and he said, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. I find that very, very valuable. When you're dealing with people that are difficult, it's like you're dealing with people that are in kindergarten. So how can you really get mad at them? If you react all the time, if you're a reactionary person, you're only going to get more and more wound up in the negative emotions. You have to learn to be an observer. An observer just watches what's going on and is helpful and tries to lift people up, but they don't get down into it to the point where they want to go out and do some violent act or, retaliate. No, that is not a good way to live. That is not good. So more and more, I think we're moving toward a way of living where that won't even work anymore. We see younger people that are saying, I don't want to work for you. You're nasty, bye. Where before you could get people to do things, just to pay them, and they would do, okay. But a lot of people are saying, no, no, I need more, you know, more of the, like after I left my flying job after 35 years, um, I found that people were being a little difficult around me in my experience, relatives and friends. It seemed like every time I said something, because I operate more from the higher dimension, and they'd always kind of rebuff it or rebuke it. And finally, I called a spiritual healer, and he said to me, Rebecca, you don't live at the same level of consciousness they live at. That cleared it up for me. I got it. I didn't expect anything anymore. You know what I mean? We expect too much from our fellow human beings. We're all on our own journey. We came here and we're here to either do something positive or, and I think it's really important to always be thinking about if there is such a thing as reincarnation, do I really want to come back as an idiot or or pay some horrible karmic debt for something because I think I've already done that. I mean, I really got this flashback that I was burned terribly in my past life as a pilot that was shot down during World War II. And I was in this hot, steamy little room waiting for a doctor to come in and heal me. And it didn't happen. I passed on. So I made up my mind that I was going to figure out how to heal myself in this life. And I've had spontaneous healings of not just cancer, appendicitis. I completely totaled a car, broke the windshield with my head one day. The car was crumpled up like an accordion. I didn't even crack a bone because I went to that place where there are no accidents.
So you had a mission in this life to learn how to heal yourself metaphysically
Yes,
and to share that with everyone.
exactly, exactly. And one of my biggest teachers was Mary Baker Eddy, who founded the Christian Science Church, home offices in Boston. They call it the Mother Church. I gave tours there for 6 years, talking to people about metaphysical spiritual healing, the way Jesus did it, and met thousands and thousands of people from all walks of life and from all over the world, and had very, very positive exchanges, learning from them and sharing. And yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, I learned most, I think all religions, when you go back to the beginnings, they had spiritual healing, manifesting. That's why these religions were founded by people who had these experiences. And the Muslims used to come into the church a lot because they pray 5 times a day, which means they're going to that level of consciousness. You can't solve a problem at the same level you created it at. You have to shift your consciousness down to the alpha theta level. And when you're praying 5 times a day, you become a natural healer. And so they used to come in and have conversations with us about that because they were experiencing a lot of healing. And then one day, an older man, he said to me, when this religion was started, when my religion was started, it was all about spiritual healing too, and being free of, because when you can free yourself from all that pain and suffering and fear, and you're not fearful of your body anymore, that is a level of freedom that is priceless, really.
It really is,
Yeah,
yes. And that's kind of what this physical universe is based on is, we have these survival instincts with the fear built in.
exactly. But they call it the pearl of great price. A king would give his ransom if he could find that 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 missing piece. It's very precious.
Tell me more about the Silva method and what evidence does it have that it actually works?
Well, yeah, there is a lot of evidence that it works. Jose Silva was a very interesting mystic from Laredo, Texas. I worked closely with his nephew, Alex Silva, who traveled the world with him. Now, Jose never went to school. Interestingly, a lot of these mystics I find were self taught. Mary Baker Eddy never went to school because she was sickly as a child. Her brother tutored her. Jose Silva didn't go to school because he had to support the family. When he was 5 years old, he went to work. His father had been murdered. So he was self taught. And there were a few times when Jose was going to give up and put the books away. He was studying psychology and metaphysics and you name it, self taught, but ran a business working with radios, fixing them, figured out the brain is like a radio tower, sending and receiving messages. Now, we also know that our government started training remote viewers. Stanford University, SRI, all the governments of the world have remote viewers. Police departments use remote viewers when they have very difficult cases. There are always psychics that are very good at tuning in. And yes, in the Silva training, on the second day, we would give the name of a person, the location, and the age to someone that had never heard of this person. They would go to level and they would actually start to either see what the person looked like or what their health condition was, and it would be accurate. One day, a woman conjured up her mother with her partner, and they sent her healing, vibrations. A few days later, the woman contacted me. She said, "Do you know, my mother called me after this seminar, and she said, 'Were you thinking about me Sunday afternoon? Because I went and looked in the mirror, and I looked 10 years younger.'" And I, but see, you can do that with yourself. There is such a thing as anti-aging, and it's using your consciousness to relax the cells in your body, to get rid of fear. You can treat anything that's out of whack if you want to do that. And I've had people walk out of my seminar, they'll call me up and go, "Guess what? I just got a phone call. Somebody offered me my perfect job. Someone else went home, and guess what? Guy shows up at her door with pizza and they date each other for a long time, synchronicities. See, what look at all the mystics now that are trying to explain to people, not so much the mystics, but the scientists that study quantum physics are confirming what the mystics have always known. We're living in a waking dream. It's a mind universe. It's mental. It's not physical. Matter isn't really even real. It's empty space. So when you get in charge of your consciousness and you understand that you are the co-creator, you're a co-creator. When you know that, because God is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, you have that power within you also, and you can claim it. Now, a lot of people are very superstitious that were raised in certain religious families or groups, and they feel like things are sacrilegious or, it's superstition, and that can hold you back. You need to know that you are infinite. And a lot of these young people that are being born now are natural star children with supernatural powers. We're seeing more and more of that coming into the planet, which is going to be very interesting.
What I find interesting is what you just said about this being a dream. So, controlling it, the Silva method is kind of like becoming lucid, like we would become lucid in a dream at night. It's becoming lucid in our everyday conscious activities.
Right. And remembering to do it. See, this is where you need to work on yourself all the time. You need to remind yourself, okay, I'm going to get in my car. I'm going to have a harmonious trip. I need a parking place. There it is. I need this meeting to go well. You get yourself into that level of consciousness where you're rehearsing it before you're in the meeting and everything goes smoothly and beautifully. You expect nothing but good to show up in your life. I used to pray on my way to the airport that my trip would be fabulous. I would imagine that I was really just going on a vacation on my private jet with my private pilots. I just happened to be wearing a uniform, but I got to walk around the airplane and talk to wherever I wanted to. I could eat the caviar in first class and the Chateaubriand, and I had a blast because it's your mindset. Now, we had other stewardesses that we called coach roaches who would throw their uniform on, no makeup, and go work the back of the airplane. And it was like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to anybody. It's all in your mindset. You can make anything a fabulous experience or a horrific experience. It's all in how you view it. I have on the back of my business card, if you want to see perfection, change your perception. Because Bruce Lipton's big on this, Greg Braden, they know that it's all about how you filter whatever is happening. You're seeing everything your way, I see it my way. Every one of us is uniquely different. Two people see the same thing, different points of view. And it's just the way it is. I mean, we can agree to agree, because we wouldn't get anything done if we didn't agree on certain things. But at the same time, we're all perceiving it through our own lens.
If this experience is a dream, when we die, are we waking up or are we going into another dream? Like, so let me explain like how we sleep at night. We're dreaming, then we wake up into this dream. Are we going to wake up into another dream or to be the dreamer? Does that make
Well, that's
sense?
a very interesting question. Now, I did hear that brain surgeon speak locally. He was here. You could have heard a pin drop. He was the neurosurgeon who developed a terrible health condition and he went into a coma.
Eben
But
Alexander.
yes, Alexander. And now he says it, all the near death experiences say it. I say it from my point of view, which was an STE, not an NDE. It's more real than real. I do believe what Jesus was trying to teach us was he kept saying the kingdom of heaven is within, it's at hand. Okay. Now, these human experiences that we have, which makes it a classroom, are here to test us, grow our divinity, I guess. But because our soul is eternal, it has always been, it will never die, it was never born. I do believe that when we do leave, it's probably an experience where we go, oh, wow, that was a dream. This is real. I think that, how do you see it? Do you see it that way?
Yeah, but I've had dreams also where I would wake up and be like, "Oh, that was just a dream. This is real." You know what I mean?
Right.
So, who knows where it ends?
Well, that's true. It could be just infinite, infinite, infinite. I mean, we don't know. And sometimes if I think about it like that, it's like, oh, that sounds exhausting.
You keep waking up and
Right,
thinking that
right.
it's reality.
But the reality is, wherever you are in the dream, I do believe you can either have a good time or you can be bored and have a lousy time and get depressed. That's the trick. It takes work to lift yourself up out of the doldrums if you're stuck down there. You don't want to be there. You want to lift yourself up. That's why spiritual practice, meditating on positive things, having a life coach. I do believe a life coach is very valuable because if you start to wake up, it's hard to keep yourself there. You keep falling asleep, waking up. I mean, I work with people because they want to stay uplifted, and maybe they haven't read all the books I've read or done all the meditating I've done or had the experiences. You need to go to other people. I always had a more advanced teacher in my back pocket when I was along the path, always. Yeah. And younger people, sometimes they don't want to talk to their elders. They don't think they know anything. No, older people have a different perspective because they've been here longer. And there's a lot to be said for experience, a lot. When I used to go up to the cockpit, sometimes, they were always hiring. And if the first officer looked like he was 22 years old, I'd go, "Ooh, no experience." But if the captain had gray hair and looked like he knew something, I felt very safe. Experience is a good thing in a lot of categories.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago about about the experience, and maybe that's all it is. Maybe it is a continuous stream, waking up, but it's all about making your current experience as beautiful as possible.
Well, they call it having a happy dream. You can have a happy dream or you can have a miserable dream. Now, what I've learned in my personal experience, because I've had a lot of traumas in my life, but I look back on them and I laugh at them. 3 marriages, diagnosis of cancer, then I had an appendicitis attack. It's all in my book. But every single one of those things was an opportunity to transform, to overcome, to use as a stepping stone for the next level and the next level. And, after I retired from my flying career, I searched for 2 years for something to do because I was still in my 50s. I didn't want to just hang it up. But I left because of 9/11. I was based in Boston. That was it. But anyway, for 2 years, I kept searching, searching, searching. Finally, I surrendered. And then the teaching, the Jose Silva techniques showed up at just the right time because it was just getting activated again with a marketing person. And I was able to start doing that. But it took 2 years for everything to be in place for me to have that opportunity. And it was funny because I would apply for jobs in spas and here, there, and everywhere. And they go, "Oh, yeah, you'll definitely get hired." But I never got hired. See, your higher self knows where you should be. It really does.
It's really comforting to know that we're not just thrown out here alone to kind of fend for ourselves.
No, we're not. And that male voice that I've heard a number of times in my life that's told me what to do, it's a guide. I mean, we all are, we're not alone. We are not alone and we don't die alone. And when we transition, you know, we're surrounded by loving beings. One of the things Jose liked to teach was, if you're trying to do something to help mankind, you're on a project like you're doing with your YouTube channel, you will get all the help you need because in the spiritual dimension, there are helpers and archangels and angelic beings that are waiting to help us, but they need to see that we're willing to show up and do our part. So that's all you have to do. I used to tell my students, you just need to get dressed and show up, but you have to have the right mindset in order to make it happen. One of the most important things that people need to really, a lot of people don't know what their purpose is. This was a big reason that people would come to my workshops because they'd say, "I just don't know why I'm here. What am I supposed to do? It seems like I haven't figured it out." Well, we all came here for a purpose. It doesn't have to be some big, global thing. It can be just being nice to people in your neighborhood or raising a family or cooking fabulous food or, everybody has a purpose, but it's something that you absolutely love. And after I left my flying career, I realized I wanted to keep going and do more things, but I didn't really know what it was. But then when I discovered that I could teach people how to get to that altered state where they could really solve problems, um, and then I was led to write a book and, coach people, it became very clear to me. Well, it was as clear as the nose on my face. It was what I've always been studying my whole life: metaphysics, spirituality, spiritual healing, manifesting. That's my passion. Whatever your passion is your purpose. Whether you can, sometimes it's so close you can't see it. And I think that's the way it is with the kingdom of heaven. It is within, and it's as close as our hands, our breath, But just like when a fish is swimming around in the ocean down at the bottom, it doesn't know it's in an ocean and that there's an atmosphere outside of the ocean that's made out of air and, other things, because that's its environment. We forget that we are these infinite beings living in the kingdom of heaven. And all we have to do is focus on that and we'll be living in it rather than looking at the negative.
That is a beautiful message. I love that. We are in the kingdom of heaven. We just need to focus on that. Tell me more about your books and how my viewers can find them.
Okay, I do have a website, rebeccatripp.com. This book I wrote, Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant, is a spiritual memoir. And it's a juicy read, it's a page turner. People that read it say, "Oh, I couldn't put it down. I read it in 2 days." Because it's very well written. I had a ghostwriter, Renee, who is a very good writer, but it's my story. And I wrote it because I just wanted people to know it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. I mean, I was a flight attendant. A lot of people think flight attendants are ditzy. They're really not. But I had my spiritual awakening, and part of it was because I was exposing myself to the right situations and people in order to discover things along the way that were contributing to my awakening. And you really need to go out there into the world and connect sometimes. But if you go on my website, rebeccatripp.com, I have a course called the Mega Manifestation Method. In that course, I have the long relax. Now you can listen to that long relax and use that to go within and visualize what you do want, because what you're putting your attention on is what you're manifesting in your experience. And I did that course. I did another one called Metaphysics Made Easy, which is a new demi course that came out a few years ago. And I'm working on a book right now that should be finished in maybe a month. It's going to be very short, but it's all about manifesting, tips and tricks and teachings and personal experiences of things that I have manifested in the realm of health, wealth, and happiness, and how you can do it too.
If you had one message to leave with the viewers today that you would hope they take away from our conversation, what would it be?
My message would be start to study these things that can bring you the kind of inner peace and freedom that you really need in these trying times, because I think more and more people are getting thrown off balance by things that are happening globally. And you need to be able to go within to center yourself, because if you want to see perfection, you have to just change your perception, and you will have maybe a life-changing experience along the way. Because if it can happen to anybody, it can happen to everybody. That's the thing that I found when I discovered that it's all within. It was like, it's so simple, we overlook it. It's not easy, but it's simple.
That is a wonderful message. Thank you so much. This has been such an honor for me. I appreciate you taking the time out of your life to come and share your amazing experience and your wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed working with you. You're fabulous, and I think everybody should be watching your channel because you're amazing.
Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. You have a beautiful day. Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.